Yeah, so you're at this point now, you've got some great momentum at your back,
Yeah.
right? You've realized that you can't make any money doing this, right? So you've got your business, which is your revenue stream. You're
Right.
doing this as a side hustle. So
Yeah.
you've had that realization, which is a great one,
Yep.
right? So you've got a couple of startups in the community that look promising, right? Out of all of this, what was your biggest thud? Like, what did you try where you felt like, I'm 100% confident that this is going to work, and then it was a big crickets fest?
Big crickets fest. That's good. I think our third startup weekend that we tried to do.
Yeah, startup weekends. Woo.
Yeah.
They're rough.
It was rough.
Yeah,
The
it's
first,
rough organizing. It is a great program.
Yeah.
It's really rough on the organizers.
Yeah. So we tried to do a industry vertical specific startup weekend.
Which industry did you choose?
Oh gosh, what was it in?
Obviously not capital equipment.
No, it was somewhere on the sports side because we had
Okay.
a couple minor league teams there.
Gotcha.
If I'm not mistaken, it's been so long I don't remember. But yeah, I don't even remember if we held it. I think we did, but it became just general stuff because we had nobody specific around that industry.
Yeah.
And there were just very few signups, and the timing didn't work out well. It was just kind of
Yeah.
I think that, and then another thud, which was interesting, is we put together a pretty robust plan for a larger space and to call it Catalyst. And it was going to be, like, we obviously had a strong maker community because of manufacturing
Yeah, sure.
with Caterpillar. And there, at the time, there really wasn't, there was kind of a burgeoning, hobbyist maker space, but nothing commercial for the public to get access to. Tech Shop, if you remember, Tech Shop was huge at the time. So we took kind of a concept to the EDC and to some of the other partners, and they're like, oh yeah, this sounds great, let's do that. Caterpillar jumped on board. Hey, we've got a building to do this in. Let's move this thing forward. So that went through a lot of the processes of bringing in architects and all this kind of stuff. And then they contracted with Tech Shop to come in and do a feasibility study, and came back with the feasibility study. And then I think, I'm not kidding, I think a week after the feasibility study was returned, Tech Shop went bankrupt. So Tech Shop was no more.
Yeah.
So that whole project just kind of
Died.
yeah. So then, interestingly, after that, I think for the community as a whole, the biggest thud was after that happened. I think a year or two later, CAT announced that they were moving their headquarters out of Peoria
Oh, man.
up to the suburbs of Chicago. So that was just devastating for everybody.
Yeah.
It was, oh my gosh,
What are we going to do now?
what are we gonna do? And
Yeah.
even so, was on.
How many jobs at that point do you think?
It wasn't many. See, that was the thing. It wasn't.
They had been slowly declining
Well,
over
and
time,
they only
or-
took their top executives
Yeah.
to Chicago, so it was only going to end up being a couple hundred people, and they had the option whether or not to go or not.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a ton, but just the headlines and everything.
Yeah.
Because
Morale.
2 years prior to that, they had announced a $1 billion headquarter project for downtown.
No, yeah. Okay.
So they were going to invest all this money in downtown, and then it was like, just teasing,
Yeah,
we're taking it
we're
away.
out.
So that was a big blow for the community. And it was
Yeah.
funny because even the mayor at the time, when they announced the $1 billion investment, he said, this is great, but I don't want the business community to become complacent. We need to be building this other stuff,
Yeah.
And I remember I wrote an article in our blog thing we were doing called the Whiskey City Collaborative about, like, this is great, but here's what we need to be doing. We need to be supporting entrepreneurs. We need to be supporting innovation, like all this other stuff we've been working on. Like, this is not our golden ticket out,
Yeah.
like to success, and nobody listened.
I think it's a great example of having the dangers of having a one industry town,
Absolutely.
right? I think Fort Worth has definitely learned its lessons over the years. Oil and gas is the most volatile industry you can be in, right? Maybe other than being a stockbroker, right? But it's a very volatile industry. It's very boom and bust. I think Fort Worth time and time again has learned the perils of being an oil and gas town,
Mm-hmm.
because we're doing great during the booms and really not great during the busts, right?
Yep.
But we're working to diversify our economy.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a lot of advantages over Peoria to do that.
Oh yeah.
But I feel like we're not meeting our potential for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a great segue into you've had now these successes. You've seen some of the ups and downs of ecosystem building, right?
Yeah.
You've seen the community kind of rally around you, right? So you've got the economic development office kind of behind your initiative, which is great. You've got the mayor kind of paying attention. So what happened after that to Peoria? Like where are they today when it comes to diversifying their economy and really understanding the power of entrepreneurship?
So I think things have changed. I mean, I don't know, pretty significantly. I think just continuing to beat the drum and having the messaging out there has helped. So personally, I sold my wife passed away in 2016, so I sold my ownership of my company in 2016, moved down to Texas for about 6 months. And I just kind of kept an eye on things as I was here. There wasn't a whole lot going on.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that was just me. That's not it at all. I think time got the best of the staff that we had.
Yeah.
And resources became limited. So the gentleman that we had hired to run Startup Peoria was working for the EDC. I think he had been there, going on like 3 or 4 years at the time. Same budget, right? Higher expectations as every year goes on, right? And he experienced burnout.
Yeah.
It was, oh my gosh, like there's so much to do that I could do.
Thankless job.
Yep. But I don't have the money to do it. I have a board of, and this is, the challenge I think with any community that has your traditional EDC stuff is, a board of 35 people. I've got to please every one of them. You know what I mean? And the interesting thing is that EDC was a multi-county EDC. So to focus, Peoria is the hub, right? It's the center.
Yeah.
It's the, it's the city. But if you focus everything there, then people start questioning, oh, well, what are you doing for my county?
Exactly.
What are you doing for my city?
Yeah.
So it became
Yeah.
really tough for him. And I'm speaking for him, and I don't know if this is, I think it's fairly accurate that, burnout becomes really real, really fast. I
Sure.
was gone. I wasn't there to support him. The other staff member that I had hired that we had to let go because of budget constraints, she moved on. So you really had a one man show. Then the president of the EDC that was supportive of it, she left to go back to Iowa. So he was just kind of this one man show on
Now
an
he's
island.
like where you were when you started.
Yeah.
Right?
He's like,
With
oh, God.
you have to start completely from scratch.
Yep.
So from what I'm hearing, you really did you have any thoughts or concerns about any succession plan? The thoughts about, okay, we need to bring some younger people into this and build them up over time so they take over after we leave, because it's a side hustle for you. You've got
Right.
your other company, right? Everybody that's doing this 100% gets burnout. Right? You need breaks.
Yep.
Had y'all even thought of that?
I think so, a little bit. So the natural place where that started to happen was within 1 Million Cups, right?
Okay, yep. They
Finding
do a
new
really
community
good job, yeah.
finding new community organizers on a regular cycle.
Testing them to make sure they'll actually show up,
Right.
do what they say they're going to do.
Yes.
It's a volunteer. Let's be clear. I mean, all these, most of the stuff that y'all did is volunteer based.
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
Nobody's getting paid to do this stuff.
Not at all. Very rarely. So
Yeah.
I think he was doing a really good job of keeping, with what budget he had and resources he had, of keeping things fresh. They continued on. We did a business pitch competition called Key Start. We had a local family office or investment office that put up like 25 grand, and wasn't Shark Tank-ish. It was more like pretty good due diligence ahead of time.
Yeah.
And then 3 or 4 of them got up and presented whatever. So they were, continuing to generate new companies coming through that program, awarding the money, continuing to do 1 Million Cups, some different mixers. So that part was there, bringing people together. I don't know that, because I was gone, bringing somebody up to, in succession planning for like owning it, wasn't really there. So yeah, it was just really, really quiet. And then he got burned out. And then about that time, I moved back up. I moved back from Texas. This was in the middle of 2017. and realized there wasn't a lot going on anymore.
It had kind of died.
It had kind of died,
Yeah.
and it wasn't because I wasn't there. It was because he just got burned out.
Yeah.
Right.
And there was only one.
Yeah, and there
One
weren't
person.
any more
Yeah.
resources. Nobody was, there weren't any more grants. There wasn't additional, funding for him to do more programs or hire. I know he had brought in some interns here and there, which
Yeah.
helped him as much as he could. So then after I got back in late 2017, he's like, I'm leaving. I'm going to Boston. His wife got a job in Boston, and he moved to Boston. So there was nobody.
Right.
So there's this program, there's a space, and there's nobody.
Yeah.
And then
And there's nobody doing it in Peoria at
No.
this point, right?
Not
so
really.
the economic development team had probably declined a little bit.
Yep.
They had a new leader that this wasn't their thing.
Right.
Mayors turnover, city council people turnover.
Yep.
So you had spent, just to frame this out, right?
Mhm.
You had spent 4 years building what you had built to. You got to a peak.
Yep.
You had a couple of successes. And then within 2 years, it was dead.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I think that is really stark. I think that should concern a lot of ecosystem builders,
Yeah.
right? So it's not enough just to build it. You've got
Right.
to sustain it,
Absolutely.
right? You've got to have broader support so that one person isn't the linchpin.
Yep.
Yeah.
There was there was a little pulse.
Yeah.
Still there a little bit. You had the companies that were still going. I think Million Cups was maybe happening once a month.
Yeah.
There's just a little bit going
it's-
on.
yeah.
So yeah.
It's revivable.
It is
for sure.
revival. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what's the one takeaway you would take from, let's just put it pretty narrow, right?
Yeah.
In the context of ecosystem building.
Right.
What's the one takeaway that you pull out of your experience in Peoria that you think people can learn from?
You have to have multiple people bought into the vision and driving it forward.
Yeah.
So
That's the number one concern.
I think
so. If you were going to start again,
Yeah.
you would start there.
Yeah, because I did. I started again when I moved back in the beginning of 2019. I launched another nonprofit
Okay.
called the Peoria Innovation Alliance to do what wasn't being done because it had kind of died off. And our primary focus was storytelling. We did a big kickoff event, and the main thing was getting people to realize all the good things that were going on.
Yeah.
So the companies had, they had continued on. Bump Boxes continued on. There were a couple kind of, rising out, that had done some really cool stuff. Which one of them's really awesome. I'll have to talk about real quickly, but. So we held an event, and actually Trey Bowles came and spoke.
Of course, the mayor of
right,
the entrepreneurial community here in
interesting
Dallas Fort
enough,
Worth.
his grandma lives in Peoria.
Yeah.
So that goes back to that.
By the way,
Kevin
if you
thing.
know Trey Bowles, he is the king of the Irish goodbye, so don't be offended if you turn around and he's gone. That's just kind of his
That's
thing.
awesome.
Everybody that knows him knows
Yep.
this about him, so
Yep.
it's just one of those things.
So yeah, our kickoff event was we had 10 tables around the outside of the room with companies
Yeah.
and initiatives that were doing really cool stuff. And the key takeaway that I heard at the end of that night was, I didn't realize this was going on here.
Yeah, okay.
So the community got exposure to all the good stuff that was going on. And then, as an organization, we're our job really is continuing to be storytelling, right? Getting the word out, reviving some of this
Yeah.
programming, getting some of this stuff back up and running again. So we did, and that I just left, when I moved down here in August. We were going for 2 years strong as a nonprofit. We opened a space. We had a board of 9 people. A lot of good stuff going on. So, but yeah, going back to your question, I think I'm realizing it again too. Having multiple people that are bought into the vision that can carry something like this forward is really important. And I don't want to say it was just relying on me, and it wasn't, but if somebody's got to be pushing it forward all the time. There's got to be somebody that can help, that's a good leader that can direct others and have a plan put in place. And I think that's partly why it is still going a little bit. We, as a board, we developed a strategic plan and our marketing plan and our fundraising plan, all that type of stuff. Now it's just a matter of it's all laid out, just go execute.
Well,
right?
you have the experience to build upon, right?
Right.
And the community does as well. Some of that knowledge is still existing, and it's a little nascent, but it still exists there, right? So